resurrection of Gilmar Abrego Garcia, mistakenly deported to a notorious jail in El Salvador, or the seizing of Mohsen Mahdawi taken into custody in Colchester, or the 9 Vermont migrant workers detained by armed border patrol guards recently. The prospect of that sort of thing happening here in Montpelier has never seemed so likely as it does now. And I feel that there's a lot of anxiety in our community, especially among the immigrant population, but among so many people. Especially since Trump has ordered the Department of Homeland Security to increase the deportation force of the U.S. by 20,000 officers, up from around 6,000, and to begin deputizing and contracting with state and local law enforcement officers. As for Montpelier's sanctuary city status, it was December 2016 that Montpelier City Council voted to make Montpelier a sanctuary city, and becoming the 3rd Vermont city to do so since Trump was elected. We're talking 2016. It authorized the city to adopt policies that would protect undocumented immigrants from deportation. Local police would not be allowed to enforce federal immigration laws. At the time, John Holler, the mayor of Montpelier, said, "At some point, I think it's important to stand up for principles regardless of their consequences."
Thanks, Deborah. I hear our bell ringing.
Okay, so basically, I would like to know what the current stance is, and then also encourage people to think about this meeting, this gathering, among other sanctuary city meetings.
Thank you.
You don't have to. I can, or briefly. Actually, I had a couple things I was going to mention. First, matter of clarification for appeals of the zoning administrator. The zoning administrator does not sit as staff to the DRB. It's actually the planning director does that for that specific reason, so there's no conflict. And that obviously we have professional people who staff committees, like city manager staffs the city council. That's how it works with volunteers and and a staff. With regard to this, the city council, the city has adopted a fair and impartial policing policy, which says that the city will not interfere, will not report anybody, will not perform duties for the federal government. And the chief is here if he wants to explain that in more detail, but we've been pretty clear of our role. If they're offering to deputize our local officials, we're not going to do that. We're not going to turn anybody over. That's all part of our current policy. That was all adopted in that time period. 2016 to 18, in that time, I think it's been amended once since then. Once the state adopted a statewide standard, we amended our policy to match the statewide standard at that time. So we have not taken more action because we think we're where we need to be.
Thanks, Bill. Steve, do you want to address?
Yeah, Steve Whitaker, Montpelier. A couple things. The agendas for a number of meetings in the cabinet and city hall haven't been including the phone number to dial into. That's a pretty basic thing for people who aren't using web computers. Making sure that the date, the time, the place, and all mediums of accessing the meeting are on the agenda is important and consistent with law. I want to, in the context of a lot of folks, the Planning Commission meeting I was at that Peter was referring to, I remember Cameron staffing the homelessness task force in its earliest days, or first the woman from the justice group, but basically throwing wet blankets on any idea before it ever had a chance to, to start to flow. And and that clarity on the role of staff is crucial if you're going to even bother having some of these committees. I disagree with Zach. I think the homelessness task force has been absolutely ineffective for 5 years and needs to be merged as an emergency housing element of a reinvigorated housing committee. But I also want to call to your attention, on April 9th, y'all voted to direct that a RFP for the housing needs assessment be prepared. And what you're seeing on the consent agenda tonight is no, there was no RFP prepared, and you're going to sole source it. I've spoken to the director of the Regional Planning Commission, who the sole source is intended. He was unaware that the staff had been directed to create an RFP. And he may even be considering withdrawing the offer to do the work. But when we discourage developers, Montpelier is an unfriendly place to do business for a lot of reasons. One of them is we don't plan worth a shit. Two, we don't, we yank opportunities for bidding out from underneath people. I know several people who were interested or had talked about putting a proposal in for the housing needs assessment, and then they were encouraged because you voted to do that, and then all of a sudden it disappears. And in effect, it points to the council that you allow staff to disregard your directives. It's dysfunctional. It really is dysfunctional to, give a directive to staff of what you want done and then have them say, oh, we're not going to do it. We'll do something else. And then stick it on the consent agenda so it doesn't even get discussed. That's just atrocious management, It's mismanagement. And you have the power to correct it.
Thank you, Steve.
I can address that. Steve's right. We opted to propose to save a lot of money and do this a lot faster. So yes, we're very inefficient. You may recall that you did direct us to do an RFP. And after that happened, we talked to CVRPC, who told us what they could do it for. And we said, that seems like a better way to go. And we sent you all an email and told you we were considering doing that and asked if anybody had any concerns. So we didn't do it without consulting with the city council. We asked, and we heard from nobody. We also heard no inquiries from anybody. So I'm really interested in who your list of people is that were dying to pay for this, because we've heard from nobody expressing any interest at any time. So maybe you have a list, or maybe it's just, someone you talk to.
They were dying to pay for it. They were willing to bid on it.
Right. And no one has talked to us about wanting to bid on it.
They trust you for good reason.
Yeah, they trust you for excellent reason. So anyway, and it's on the consent agenda, so you can remove it. You could vote not to do this and have it go back out to continue the RFP process. That is your choice. And I think we've made no bones about the way we're doing this. There certainly isn't a sneak around. It's trying to accomplish a council goal as quickly and inexpensively with a professional outfit for whom we are a partner, to whom we pay dues. So that's our story, and we're sticking with it.
Thanks, Bill. Any other members of the public that I haven't recognized yet? All right, moving on to the consent agenda. We're pulling item A to give Councillor Sheridan a chance to review the minutes. With that, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. You've approved the consent agenda, save for item A. Next, we have appointments to the Child Care Task Force. Oh, now I'm sorry. I realized that when we were approving the minutes, I didn't call people's attentions to the time frames. Kelly and I met. These are our best estimates on the time frames for the various items. We're already ahead of ourselves because we've been sort of thinking of 30 minutes for everything up to and through the consent agenda. So we'll just keep working on honing our ability to predict how these conversations take place. For For instance, now we have 4 applications for the Child Care Task Force. I would entertain a motion to appoint all 4 of these people unless someone wants to take it up in a different way.
Is there any of them here that might want to speak?
Oh, here is someone. Good question. Come on up. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me. My name is Kristen Cantu. I live at 4 Foster Street and I work at 39 College Street. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak and for considering my application to serve on the Child Care Task Force. I'm here before you as a resident and an active member of the City of Montpelier, as someone who believes in our community's potential and is committed to helping it thrive. Childcare is an essential building block of any thriving community, and accessible, reliable childcare isn't just a convenience, but it's a necessity. It's a foundation that supports our working families, empowers parents, and fuels our local economy. Without it, our community can't truly prosper. At Greenway Institute, where I work, we see a tremendous opportunity to be a part of the solution. Our organization is privileged to control 6 buildings on the former VCFA campus, and we believe this campus is an ideal location for a new child care and early education center. It's a space that could become a haven of learning and growth for our youngest residents while easing the burden on working parents across the city. But our vision isn't just about a single location. The need for childcare extends far beyond campus. Montpelier must explore how we can create more childcare spaces throughout our city, whether it's on the Greenway campus, downtown, or even in someone's home. We have to ask ourselves, how can we as a city make it easier for individuals and organizations to establish these vital spaces? How can we support childcare providers in meeting their staffing needs, which are often their greatest challenge? I don't have the answers, but I'm committed to finding them. And I'm committed to working with all of you, city officials, educators, parents, and community leaders to develop a clear, actionable plan that expands childcare access and ensures its sustainability in Montpelier. Thank you.
Great, thanks. You work practically across the street from me. I work at 56 College Street.
Oh,
So.
nice.
Anyone have any questions?
I'll move the appointment.
All right, we have a motion for the appointments. Is there a second? Any discussion?
Thanks for coming in, by the way.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Yes, I do appreciate you coming in. Thank you. Yes.
If it would be in order right now, I have a motion I'd like to make about the staff role on the Child Care Task Force, but if it's not in order under the appointment section, that's fine. You can
Why
take it
don't you
up.
make it right now?
Okay, so I appreciate that we had a couple of public comments about the role of staff on committees, which is something that I know that the folks who are working on the committee overhaul are thinking very hard about. And so I was thinking about this Child Care Task Force, and I remember it seemed to me that part of the vision for it when it was first proposed is that it would be really a community-based effort and that the city was pulling together the community to do this. So I want to make sure that the role of the city staff is appropriate and manageable for the staff. So I would like to see that for that committee only, I don't know about any other committees for that one, to limit the role of the staff member to making sure that we comply with open meeting law and, so that the agendas get warned and the minutes get posted, any kind of record keeping, like tracking who's on the committee, that kind of stuff. And then just serve as a liaison between the Child Care Task Force and the city, and not take minutes, not set the agenda, not run the meetings, not provide the driving force of energy to make the task force happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So thank you, Carrie, mentioning this. When we were talking about establishing this task force, Jack asked the same question, and Jim said there are 2 city councilors on that task force. So the expectation is very limited from city staff. But it is good that you are highlighting and mentioning everything they could do. So the plan is not to create more work for the city staff. Thanks.
Great. That is what I thought, and so I wanted to make a motion that would just kind of put that on the record. So I have a motion. I sent it to the clerk already, because it's kind of long, so I'll read it. So I move that the city manager shall appoint a staff member to serve a support role for the Child Care Task Force with the following responsibilities. Ensure that the operation of the Child Care Task Force complies with all applicable open meeting laws by warning meetings, posting minutes, and any other actions required for legal compliance. Administer the record-keeping duties of the Child Care Task Force, including tracking the membership and representation on the task force, processing applications, maintaining the appropriate sections of the city website, and any other actions required for administration of the task force's work. Serve as a liaison between the Child Care Task Force and the city staff for purposes of sharing information.
All right.
That's my motion.
Is there a second? And our council members, are you all okay with taking this up and acting on it, even though it's not been warned, Palin?
So I don't understand why we are doing this, because we don't do this with other committees. Is there any concern about this? Task force will create a lot of work. So if you want to do this, we should do this for all committees, because we are doing the review of the committees, and we talk about making very consistent role for city councilors, but all committees, we can do the same thing for city staff. Then we don't have to make a separate motion. I think if we just say that in one committee or task force, city staff will do something, another thing, I need to learn the rationale behind it. I'm okay, but I need to learn why are we doing this only specifically for the child care task force.
Carrie, then Sal.
So I saw this as an opportunity, since we're creating a new committee, basically, to, right from the get-go, define what the role of the staff is, because I am not assuming that the role of the staff on every committee will be exactly the same. Now, maybe that's not the case. Maybe we're going to get a proposal for committee structure where every single committee has a staff person who has exactly the same role. Great, we don't have that right now. And I'm not sure that would be right. So I think we really have to think about that. Because I've definitely gotten conflicting feedback from committee members about the role of staff that they want. And some committees would like to see a more active role and feel like they're more sort of in partnership with the city staff, and others feel differently. So I think that warrants conversation. So, so that's why I'm proposing it now. And if we decided to go in the direction of every single committee having staff defined this way, I think we can make that decision at a different time. I also don't want to wait for the committee proposal to come. And it's just too long to wait.
Sal, and then Bill.
Well, my question had to do with the committee on committees, actually.
Yeah.
My understanding is, I'm not on the committee, but my understanding is that the role of this staff representative is going to be defined, perhaps several roles. I'm not sure how it's being organized, but I think one of the goals, for example, was to determine when a councilor is a voting member, you know,
Right.
which is a big question. So what I'm wondering, I mean, I like your idea, and it could very well be one class of staff role, you know, one description of a staff role for X number of committees among several descriptions. And I just wonder why we're doing it now and not waiting for the committee to come forward with their, you know, what their reorganizational plan for the committees is.
Bill.
I can't answer for why Carrie is proposing this now, but I can tell you pretty clearly that there are some committees for which we have staff that have very direct professional expertise that are there to provide an actual knowledge resource. Transportation, we have, you know, Corey from Public Works who's, you know, knowledgeable about that, or a water sewer committee, or when we have the police committee, you have our police professionals. We don't have any professional childcare providers. This is not an area of expertise for us. So I think part of it is we wouldn't have someone with specific knowledge to be a value add other than to get the things done that were mentioned. And so I think as we think about committees, and I think that's what the committee is there a staff person that has a particular skill or strength or qualification that can provide the committee with the information and guidance that they need on certain issues? Or is this one where the committee's really doing their own research and heavy lifting and the staff person is just, is this? So I think there is a distinction to be made, and probably will be addressed somewhat in the report, but also as you go forward, like what are you looking for? That's something that's really obvious. We need Mike because we're gonna have a zoning subcommittee. You know, we need whomever, like, and others where it's like, oh, who's gonna do this? Because we have, one of the reasons why the city manager's office directly staffed the homelessness task force is we didn't really have anybody else. It's like, who else is the logical person to do it, right, other than us? So it's not that we had any particular expertise.
So can I say something?
Carrie. Go ahead, Pam.
I'm on the subcommittee of the committee review with Ben. And Ben, Evelyn, Kelly, and I are already working. So I suggest we should wait our report. It is coming for the next meeting. And because we decided to also define what the task force is, what the committee is, what the advisory board is, what the commission is, and what are the city councilors' role, what are the staff roles. So you will see these things on that report. So my suggestion would be just wait until next meeting, then just like add up things for all the task force, because this is not a committee, this is a task force. I think it will be a better approach. And we will not we will not meet until our next meeting anyway. So there will be no staff doing anything on this task force. So just a suggestion to wait until the next meeting when you see the report. Thank you.
Sure, if it's coming next meeting and we can do something, I don't have any objection to that. I will say that part of my motivation for doing this was wanting to see the task force get going and not to be waiting. We've been waiting 2 months for any movement on committees, and it could be more weeks. And the task force has some energy behind it. It's got 4 people now on it, and my question was, who's going to make this happen? Who's going to call a meeting? And you know, Palin, you said that the task force won't be meeting between now and the next council meeting. Well, whose decision is that? There's nobody in charge of it. So I wanted to get it clear that there was something that's going to happen. So if that seems like it's clear, then okay.
Okay, can I say something? Adrian and I are the charge of that task force, which we mentioned it when we approve it. So if there's an objection to it, and if city council wants make a city staff be in charge of that task force, it is fine. I don't know what you say, Adrian,
Yeah, I mean, I was under the impression Jill and I were working on the task force, we helped review the applications, it's presented today for approval by council. We've been working to just, on the back end, get things organized, get things ready, and, once we get these approved, we'll, we're gonna talk and have a process for scheduling the first meeting, but then it'll be warned to the city like we do with all of our other meetings. We'll go through the same process. Get the agenda, get it approved, get it warned. I don't know. I think it's fine.
Carrie.
Yeah, I don't mean to be making a big deal about this. If it's fine, it's fine. It seems like an opportunity to define something for this one particular group. I will say that also part of what I'm hoping the committee on committees is doing is talking about defining the role of the counselors on committees. I don't think we put Palin and Adrian in charge of the committee. I think we put them on the committee, on the task force. That's a big difference. And so if we want our city council member to be in charge of the committee, that's fine, but we have to say that when we create a committee. We have to say, let's be really clear about that for each one.
Okay.
So I can withdraw my motion.
Let's just take it up
Yeah.
along with the overall committee discussion next time. Thanks. That gets us to item 7, update on federal building. that you, Bill?
I'm not sure. So we were asked by Councilmember Doyle to place this on the agenda. I believe there's folks from the Montpelier Commission on Recovery and Resilience that may wish to speak to this. I think what we know is that they've been in discussions with the state, ACCD, about a process where a request can be submitted where the state might be interested in seeking a direct sale, but that there would be certain due diligence done, and we would be asked to support a letter of intent. But I see two members of the commission here nodding their heads, and they look far more knowledgeable than I am, so I don't know which one's speaking, but I would turn it over to
Why
them.
don't you both come up?
Good evening, Peter Walk, resident of Terrace Street, member of the Montpelier Commission on Recovery and Resilience. Happy to be here with you.
And I'm Paul Carnahan, resident of Sabin Street.
So we're happy to join you today. This is obviously a fast-moving process with the federal process involving the former post office. We have been, and the commission has been in discussions with the Agency of Commerce Community Development about their interest in signaling to the federal government that they are interested in potentially purchasing the building, which needs to be, either the city or the state needs to do so by May 21st in order to avoid it moving directly into a sale. So we are hoping to see the city support that effort by the state to provide time for all parties and the public to be thinking about how to engage in and consider what's possible on that facility before it would move directly into sale. ACCD is not committing to purchasing the building, nor is any other party in the state. They want to see, like all of us, the time to be able to do that work well and to be able to potentially move forward with an option that worked for the city and for the residents.
Thank you. Mike, how does the email that we got from you just earlier this evening play into all of this? Does it change what we would be approving at all?
I think that's a separate, so Mike Miller, Planning Director, I think that's a separate question. So what they're working on is the letter of intent, and what the Historic Preservation Commission meeting last night was looking at was the Section 106 review process, which the federal government was supposed to go through a process where it would go to the state would then ask for comment and input from the certified local government, which is our Historic Preservation Commission. They would provide comment before it went back up. It kind of went to the state, went back up, and never went to the CLG. So
They kind of missed us.
They missed us. So the Historic Preservation Commission met, looked at what was in that letter, and had some suggested changes that they would like to recommend. And it doesn't change substantially a lot. I'll go into as much detail as you want, but really where they came down to was that there's some confusion in how the GSA set up the restrictions that would go with the property. And it kind of mixed the Historic Preservation Commission responsibilities and the Design Review Commission responsibilities and kind of jumbled them up a little bit. And that's going to cause problems down the line when we go to try to actually review permits, because the covenant is going to end up being a barrier. So what they want to do is to clean up that deed restriction to be clear, to go through and say, any changes to the exterior of the building will have to go to the Historic Preservation Commission. And then, and here's the question for council, does the Historic Preservation Commission have the authority to approve or disapprove any change? Or will that board make a recommendation to the Design Review Committee, who will then make that decision? And so they just want to make the process clear in the deed restrictions that if somebody wants to change the exterior of the building, whether it's a private, whether it's the state, whoever it is, whoever ends up owning this building, if they want to make a change to the exterior of the building, that it will be reviewed by the Historic Preservation Commission, and a recommendation will go to the DRC, who will then make a determination. Or they will have the power to approve and deny that change. I think they would favor the first, but they would be okay with the second.
And in your view, which is the way that would pose the least impediment to changing or demolishing the ugliest building on State Street?
So, the good news from that perspective would be, although you read through the deed restrictions, it sounds like we're preserving the building. The way it's couched is we have to preserve the building. Therefore, here's the process that's going to be followed. Any changes to the exterior have to follow our design review rules, which do in fact have provisions that could allow you to demolish. They could have conditions in there that say certain features have to be maintained, or only the facade, or whatever. The Design Review Commission, or the Historic Preservation Commission, will follow the standards, the National Park Service standards for building, you might have to help me, rehabilitation. And so they have to follow those standards. So there are various ones in the Park Service. Some of them say you have to preserve buildings. Some of them say rehabilitation. This is rehabilitation, which does allow, in certain circumstances, the demolition of the building. So it would come down to looking at our zoning and whether it meets those requirements that say you can. And they would have the authority to go through and say, you need to maintain this. You need to have, I think the hardest part about this building is the fact that it's, the first floor is 42 inches under water in a flood. That's a problem. So no matter what you're doing in the future, you're going to have to do something substantially different. It's going to make it very difficult to continue to use that building. But there could be standards that say there's some unique marble to the building. There's unique, we would like to see a lobby that incorporates those features into a lobby and has some, and again, that's up to the applicant to come in and work with the HPC to come up with what would be, if a demolition was approved, these would be the conditions. Or it could come up that, nope, the Historic Preservation Commission and DRC says you don't meet these thresholds, therefore it can't be demolished. But again, there is a process whereby it could happen.
Okay, thanks.
So there is a question that would be out there on that, whether we want to give one authority or the other.
Sal?
So I got lost on what this has to do with the state's letter of intent.
It doesn't, and I think that was initially the start. So it's two separate pieces related to the same project. The letter of intent is completely different. Whether the state or city puts in a letter of intent is completely different than this memo I sent out today based on last night's historic preservation meeting.
So we can resolve this without...
Yes, you can resolve this and it would still go to sale.
Okay.
And my understanding is that the state intends to file a letter of intent.
That's their question.
With GSA, yeah.
Right.
Is that the
Yeah,
case?
so there are two, yeah. So as Mike said, there are two processes going on at the same time. So the process now regarding the state is whether someone's going to file notice with the GSA that they're interested in exploring, doing due diligence for the use of this building, and thereby buying, hopefully, the request would be a 180-day period to at least to do some due diligence as far as the what the zoning requirements are, what the floodplain restrictions are going to be, and also potentially seeing if an investor group can be found that is interested in working with the city to develop this site. So the part that has changed since we were here, was it 2 meetings ago, is that the state is now, when we first came, we were thinking the city would have to provide that letter of intent to slow the process down. But since that meeting, we've talked to the state, and they have the capacity and the interest to file a letter of intent. And we are also interested in finding consultants to advise this group on what can be done with the property.
And if I could just clarify that the state is willing to do that regardless of the outcome of the issue that Mike is discussing.
Yes.
So we can truly separate the two
Truly
items.
separate them, yes.
Amen.
And the issue for us on the first one is, and I think it's probably obvious, but is, does the council want to send a letter of support for the state's effort?
Yes, I have a
I would
motion
think we
prepared
would,
along those
but
lines.
we still.
Let's hear it.
Yes, Ben has spoken quite eloquently about this. I'm sure I can do it justice the way he can, but it just makes sense to me that a building that has played such a central role in the city and in the downtown, that we ought to do whatever we can to support some role in controlling what happens to that property. And I fear that if it goes to auction without our having an opportunity for due diligence and possibly pulling together a consortium of some kind, who would purchase it and develop it with our input instead of doing whatever it is they want, or doing nothing, which is just as bad. So I think it's important that the state, and I'm grateful that they're involved. I'm grateful for your work that you've done in holding these discussions and getting people interested and recognizing the importance of this. So with that, I would move that the council directs city staff to write and submit to the appropriate department at the state of Vermont. I don't know what that is, we can substitute. A letter of support for the state's official expression of intent to the GSA with regard to the negotiated sale of the federal building.
Is there a second?
I'd like to, I'll vote for if it says under no financial obligation of the city at this point.
So in our last meeting, we made a motion to see and review the letter of the city is planning to send. Are they any letter so is there any letter we can review tonight, or can we?
Those are two different letters.
Can I
Sure,
finish? Thank you. So, my next question would be what kind of letter we are talking about. Will we be able to review it before we send? And like Jim was saying, can we just add things? Or the plan is just to write this stuff, we'll write the letter and they just send it. So I'm just wondering what happened to our former motion. Thank you.
So the former motion was assuming that the city was going to send the letter of intent that the state is now going to send. So we had drafted that letter, but that would have meant that the city was saying we intend to engage in the process of potentially purchasing. Since that time, we've engaged, or actually the commission and some of our staff have engaged with the state, and they've taken over doing what we were going to do. So this is an entirely different letter. This would be a letter basically saying we support what the state wants to do, instead of us saying we're going to do it. So we did have that letter drafted. It was ready for tonight's meeting, but now the process has gone in a different direction. So, if you'd like to see the letter of support that we send, we can certainly send that. You have a meeting next week, but I think, it would be pretty straightforward. We support what the state's doing.
Can I say something? I just want to clarify the difference between the letters, that's all, for the public knowledge. So if it will be like you just explained, then there is no need to review anything. I would just like referring the former motion and what happened to it. So now I'm clear. I think most of the public also, they are clear too. Thank you.
So,
I would just add, I think the deadline is the 21st, and we don't meet until the 28th, so we really don't have time to review unless we call a special meeting, which we could do, but I don't see the need.
No,
the meeting on the 21st.
Oh, we do?
Yeah. Talk about the city plan.
That will still be too late, but
Yep.
I'm glad you
Still be
mentioned
too
that.
late, yep.
I'll cancel
Yeah.
my appointment.
We don't need to review anything because they are two different letters now.
Yeah,
And-
I agree.
And we don't have, the motion doesn't have a second yet. Do you?
Yes,
Are you, does it?
Well,
Jim seconded it with an extra phrase on that Sal nodded.
yeah, I want
I'm happy to add that.
second.
All right, so now we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It's been interesting watching this conversation in public because I'm seeing people saying, great, I'm glad the city is buying the federal building, and I'm seeing people saying, no way, we should not be buying the federal building. And we're not doing either one, we're not doing it either for the people who would be happy for us to do it or the people who would be mad for us to do it.
The reason why I had Sal add that is I sit in a circle at the senior center, and the circle was definitely like, we don't want you buying the building. So I wanted them to be clear when I sit with them that I can say to them, no, we're supporting the letter, but under no financial obligation. It's tough.
Are you guys
If
set?
we're gonna add some later on, then that's another time.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming. Steve.
Thank you for your work on this.
I understand and support that the city's not taking on a financial obligation, but I think the city, being the one withstanding to actually get front of the line, I think the state is stepping in to help the city because we're not prepared or don't have the capacity or the organization yet to do it. But the city is first in line to acquire it, and defining what that relationship's going to be. In effect, I think what you've done is delegate the role of like economic development council or committee that we used to have to the Recovery and Resilience Commission and said, you go represent our interests and help us figure out how we're going to. This is not just the building that's at play here. It's the building and the parking behind it and potentially the whole pit, which is a major project of planning and negotiation with the state and with the mutual insurance company, et cetera. So I just think that we need to be explicitly clear with what we're, being the history of the Recovery and Resilience Commission doing our emergency plan for us behind closed doors is not what we want to walk into with this. This needs to be, if the city's role and the city's priority access to purchase the building is to be invoked here, the city needs to make sure this is a thorough and transparent process.
Thank you. All right.
And just for the record, the city's Economic Development Corporation that he was referring to was a nonprofit corporation separate from the city and did not have open public meetings. So he wants us to do it that way, but not this way.
All right. Item 8, congressionally directed spending updates. Yes. Did you want to
Yes.
talk about the other part of it?
We didn't actually go and say if you guys wanted to approve, have the words, HPC and staff request the city council decide whether it wants the stronger approval term or recommendations from the Historic Preservation Commission. It's just what will end up going, they're recommending changes to the deed restrictions at GSA. Do we want the Historic Preservation Commission to recommend that they will make that decision, or do you want them to make a recommendation that says they will make a recommendation to the DRC, Design Review Committee, to make that decision? That makes sense.
To shorten that up, would you prefer that the conclusion of the Historic Preservation Commission be determinative or a recommendation?
Carrie.
I would prefer the first. Do we have the authority to do that on a case-by-case basis?
Well, I mean, this will be as a covenant. So officially, this should have gone to the HPC so they could have provided comments before it got approved. Where they're now putting in the recommendation afterwards because it kind of circumvented that.
And to be clear, if I may be clear about that, the decision of the Historic Preservation Commission goes to our Design Review Committee, which then ultimately goes to our Development Review Board, which makes a final determination. So typically those decisions are recommendations to those boards, so that just so that everyone's aware.
And as I recall, the design review committee also is not a decision-making body. It's something you have to
Correct.
go to them, and you have to show that you presented the project to them, and they may have some comments, but they can make recommendations, and you can still say, no, I'm taking it to the DRB
Correct.
under my original plan.
Correct.
Okay? So,
So the deed restrictions are, the GSA has its own restrictions and we're modifying them, is that?
Yes, I sent in the packet, and I believe you guys already had these in the past. The letter that kind of looked like this guy. And if you don't, it's in your email box because I sent it. So that was GSA's letter to the state, and it laid out, these are the things we're going to put in as the deed restrictions. And then HPC looked at it and said, this is going to be a problem going forward. It's all jumbled up. We're not going to be able to administer this. Let's clean it up and make some recommendations back to GSA. So when they do make their final deed, it will have the recommended language, hopefully.
and this is where, Carrie, you had a recommendation for what it should be.
Yeah, I don't know how to word it though. I don't know.
I think the question-
I think the question is on this particular case, we want the decision of the historic preservation committee to be determinative.
Yes.
And then all the stuff about what you say with GSA and everything will flow from that.
Yes.
So is that enough in the motion, what I just said?
That would be, yeah, that would be, yep, I said one or the other. We didn't have a preference, and if the recommendation is that it is determinative, then I will get that back to the HPC and they'll write the letter with that intent.
So that's your motion. Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion? Sal?
So how does it do this with the Historic Preservation Commission? So I thought I heard someone say they usually make a recommendation to the design review board.
Design Review Committee.
So usually the Historic Preservation Commission is outside of the permit review process. Historic preservation is outside of the design review process. Permits go to DRC, DRC goes to DRB, or to the administrative officer. The only way the Historic Preservation Commission comes in is when there is a project with federal funding or federal property which requires what is called a Section 106 report, which this property does. And so that there'll be covenants and deeds restrictions put on it. In which case, those are supposed to go to the Historic Preservation Commission. We don't get very many of those. If the federal government were to expand a highway, we were going to use federal money and it was going to impact a historic building, then Historic Preservation Commission would provide input to the federal government or whoever, depending on the project. In this case, it's part of the covenant of this building being sold. Whether it's sold to the state or whether it's sold to a private person, it'll have the same covenant that says, here's the process. If you want to make a change to this building, these are the rules you're going to follow. And in this case, because it's a historic building on the historic register, we could say HPC, as our certified local government and as our person who reviews these historic properties, we're going to give you the veto power over whatever happens to this. You can make a recommendation to allow the demolition to occur, or you can make a recommendation that says we don't allow it to occur.
You need a determination.
Yes.
And the motion before us is that it would be determinative.
Yes, that's the motion. That's great.
Any discussion on this? I see the people are pondering and perhaps a little bit confused. Are you ready for a vote? If so, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you.
And thank you for taking that up the last second.
Thanks, Mike.
Appreciate it.
Next up, congressionally directed spending update, formerly known as earmarks.
Councilmember Cohn asked for this item to be placed on the agenda. I don't know if there's something specific that she's looking for. We're prepared to discuss what we've applied for in the history of them in the last year or two and what we know as of today even. So Chris is going to take this.
Chris Lumber, Sustainability and Facilities Coordinator.
Unless Councilmember Cohen has anything she wants to add.
A couple of the residents who live in my district asked this question just to be informed if there are any specific information we have which like we call earmarks, right? Is there anything we can use in a short term, right? Or what are the information out there related to earmarks we can use or we cannot use? That's the rationale behind asking this agenda item. Thank you.
Okay. So I think the answer to your question is that in the short term, there's not congressional directed spending money coming our way. The history of this in fiscal year 25, two CDS requests were approved, and they were $2.5 million toward a $13 million project to accelerate water line replacements, kind of citywide. And these are, I'll go down Kurt's Lane a little bit here, but these are the worst of the water lines as identified in the state report. And the second one was $1.5 million that was a pass-through CDS on behalf of Down Street, which was intended to elevate the 20-unit building on Elm Street that got flooded in July of 23. Again, both of those were approved last fiscal year, but then they were not funded when in March of this year, when the continuing budget resolution was passed by the legislature at the federal level. So moving forward with that, the various senators and Representative Balance portals for application have opened at different times. March 28th, Senator Welch's portal opened, and we reapplied for both of those that were previously approved. And then May 2nd, Senator Sanders' portal opened, and we applied again with him at Senator Sanders' office's direction for the water line replacement project. And we also added a $7.5 million request to replace 5 sewer pump stations that got damaged in the flood and these things are decades old, well past their service life, and they are in locations prone to flooding. They're in vaults underground. The deepest one is about 30 feet. The new equipment will be placed above ground and flood resistant. So that was one additional request. And the third request for Senator Sanders was to extend the river ice melting pipeline from where it discharges into the Winooski River, approximately at the liquor warehouse, extending that west toward all the way to Bailey Avenue Bridge, because that's a section now that is prone to ice jamming, and it's real hard to access with equipment and that type of thing. And somewhere, I didn't make note of the date, but somewhere in between Senator Welch's portal opening and Senator Sanders' portal opening, we received a request from Representative Balin's office to register interest in applying. And we did, we registered interest for $100,000 to replace faulty water line valves in the Bailey Avenue area that DPW folks have been fighting for years to improve that. And that was a $100,000 request. And also not a request, but registering interest. We also registered interest in a $5 million request for the construction and renovation of property up at the Country Club Road. And kind of, that was a multifaceted property, highlighting the flood resistance of that property and its value to the city in that regard, as well as the fact that it's a homeless shelter and provides senior services and a number of other things. Not on my not on my inclusion in the agenda today, just this afternoon, I received an email from Valent's office saying that they are not going to move forward with either of those requests. Any questions?
East of the liquor store, right?
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. So it's nice to be thinking about asking for this money. Is there any reason to think that this is actually, anything is going to be forthcoming? Are you in a position to know?
I don't know. I don't know, Jack.
Setting up with that?
Hmm?
You setting up with that?
No, really?
I mean, the only thing that we can really, we kicked this around ourselves was, what are the chances? But, we were, I mean, our delegation opened up portals for the applications, so they obviously think there's a chance. Don't know how much of a chance, so we would be remiss if we had said, well, it's not going to happen, don't put in. So we felt the need to pursue, especially the ones that got funded and approved last year, and then sort of rescinded later. But who knows? Your guess, everyone's still, we won't know till October, November, whenever they finish.
I would add to what Bill said that, kind of within the manager's office, our thinking was that we don't know, right? We don't know, but we do have to put our best foot forward and really put out quality applications in hopes that this does come to pass.
Yep. And
that's the direction.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks for your work on it.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, thanks, Chris. Let's just move right along. Revenue options discussion.
Yeah, this was also requested by Councilmember Cohen, so I'll just turn it over to her.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. So we usually discuss this item during our budget session. So I thought maybe we can just discuss some of the ideas now beforehand. In District 2, we send a survey to our residents, what they want to see in terms of economic development and this revenue options. And they have some ideas what to do in the downtown and what we can do as a city. So that's why I just want to bring this item to the attention of City Council, and maybe we can just start the discussion, and when we hit the budget season, maybe we will have something concrete to work on it, because budget cuts will not work forever, and I don't think we have any other place to do that. So I cannot support any cuts anymore coming budget session. So I think it is important to talk about this revenue options, if we can find one or two new ideas, like we did last time, right? At this last minute local option sale tax. Maybe we can find something before the budget season comes. Thank you.
Adrian.
I'll start. I think about this a lot in terms of economic goals for our city, and it's complex, right? So we've been hit, the past couple of years with, bad things that have happened, and who knows if we're going to get flooded again this year. I know my water table is really high in my yard, and we're kind of in that same weather pattern again. And so when I think of economic goals and our small town, I think about not necessarily, we've been trying these events, we've been tracking them, but it's much bigger than that. Huge. It's like a much broader, thought process. And so I don't know, we had the 1% sales tax, which was nice, but I think we need to get to the root cause of this issue. And I don't know how to solve it. I'm not coming with any, magic wand solutions, but we have the housing needs assessment, which I think is a really good step in looking at housing. We have to bring in people to our town. And so when I was going through my train of thought, I started looking at our downtown buildings, and I didn't spend too much research on this. Maybe the housing needs assessment will, reveal a little bit more. But we have a lot of vacant buildings in our downtown, both commercial and residential. I spent 30 minutes on this today, so my numbers are probably totally off, and hopefully someone out there in the world could, you know, confirm or deny this, but based on a very quick review of about 10 different websites looking at commercial properties in Montpelier, we have over 50,000 square feet available in our downtown, and most of those have been vacant for over 2 years due to the flood, most likely. These are my assumptions. TD Bank was on there. We have some, you know, State Street buildings behind Julio's, the garage. There's a couple on Main Street that were flooded that never came back, those businesses. The building over by Elm Street, Cheshire Cat was in there. It was like office buildings, but that's, you know, over 10,000 square feet of space. The TD Bank, the big building, the first floor is also not there, and then Walgreens, and then Rebel Rouser. And so I'm just wondering, I was brainstorming in my head, now I'm brainstorming out loud. Is there an opportunity to work with these people that own these properties? Is there a way to look at some conversion from commercial to residential? You know, I don't know what our zoning says in terms of like mixed use, making them flood resistant. You know, what are those opportunities in our town to look at this vacancies that we have, bring in businesses since they've been empty for over 2 years? I think it's critical. You know, our businesses are gonna be closing. I think Athena's Attic just announced they're closing because businesses, it's dire. I mean, our downtown could be extinct, and we love Montpelier. And so I think we need to be very, very bold, very, very strategic, and really think outside the box of how we're going to save our town, how we're going to make it thrive in these economic, you know, downfalls. I mean, I've seen ghost towns, and I don't want Montpelier to be a ghost town. So I think, how do we work with businesses? How do we work with Montpelier Alive? I'm not interested in like just taxing people to death, but I think we need to be very strategic and bringing in businesses, converting these businesses to housing, because people need to come into our downtown, and that's what's going to save us. And that's going to, you know, I think that's the way to go. That was a brainstorm. There was no solutions there per se.
I'll follow up on something she said. 3 of us, myself and Sal and Ben, attended the Montpelier Live meeting, and we heard, you know, the stress that they're under, and they're close to like being like Burlington, writing a letter, like 91 merchants did it in Burlington, and so they want to form a committee to look at really the unhoused problem and bring the partners in on it and talk about it. And I don't know where it's going to go, but they asked for a city councilor to join them, and Ben's got plenty to do himself, sits on enough committees, so I said that I would take it. But that's not really a committee under the city. I'm just a city council, representing the city council, so that they have somebody to bounce ideas off, I guess, or do I have any input I want to add? But I just wanted to announce that. But the meeting was pretty down in a way. They're struggling, there's no question.
So Jim, what you're saying is that some of the members of Montpelier Alive or the downtown businesses have decided that they are creating a committee in your...
They have. We're going to meet Friday at 8:30 for our first one, just to kind of get to know each other and talk about who we might want to invite first to talk with us, things like that. And I know one of them is the homeless Zach's group, I think, and stuff like that. But we're just going to talk about it and see what happens, you know. I mean, it's you know, it's not just Burlington that has this problem. It's showing up in Montpelier, and it's probably going to show up more as we go into the summer. So, yeah, so I'm willing to sit on it, and I will report to the council what's going on, whether I'll send an email to you all or in the meetings, I'll keep you, like I always do in anything that I do, I'll keep you abreast on what's going on.
Thanks. Pam?
So I think this is Montpelier Business Association.
It's
Right.
Both, okay, because businesses are members of Montpelier Ally, and also they have their own
Yeah,
association.
they're
right?
both, it's a combination.
Combination, okay. So I'm happy to attend the meetings. I don't have to represent city council, but just like meet people, and maybe we can talk about this revenue options with them. Maybe we will come up some ideas and they can bring those things to the city council.
Still waiting to hear
Yeah.
for sure where it is. I
Yeah.
put it, they sent, I got so many emails, it was confusing. It sounded like everybody was saying Friday at 8:30, but I was like, so where is it being held? I assume it's Friday 8:30. I imagine it's gonna be in City Hall, is my guess.
So, if,
Of course, you're welcome.
thank you. So if we want to do something like we did other items, like having a subcommittee or something, which department we can work with?
Well, that's a good question. As I'm thinking about this, I thought when we put this on the agenda, what we're thinking about was that you were proposing that we should explore other mechanisms by which the city could generate revenue. And
Yeah.
that's not, the city government could generate revenue, like our alternatives to our taxes. It sounds like that's not really where you're going with this.
I just want to have the discussion. So I don't have any set agenda in my mind. I just want to discuss, and if we decide to do something, I just want to follow up and move forward, that's all.
So, okay.
I mean, a revenue option, which I'm not saying I'm for or against, but I've been following Burlington's news and this is kind of what made me go down this path of the vacancies, is the vacancy tax. They just upped it to like $6,000 a year, because they have a serious vacancy issue in Burlington, and, you know, they're giving these developers incentives and asking for quarterly reports to see what progresses they made, like holding them accountable so they don't have, you know, empty storefronts in their town, because it really is, that's not good economic development. So that's a revenue option. I'm not saying that, you know, that's something that, you know, I don't know the pros and cons behind that right now, but that's, you know, when I started thinking about the vacancy and I started doing all this research, that is a revenue option for, it's a vacancy tax that could bring in money, but I don't know. Just throwing it out there.
Carrie and Sal.
For bringing that up, Adrian. This is one of the recommendations that came out of the Housing Committee at one point, and it's kind of what their most recent recommendations after they didn't get everything they wanted into the city plan, they were like, okay, there's just a couple of things I want you to take away. And one of them was a recommendation for a vacancy tax. And so I just want it to be on the table, right? I think it's complex, and I think in past discussions we've had about this, there's been, if you don't want to punish a landlord for not being able to find a tenant when they're really trying and situations working against them. But then on the other hand, we do have some properties that just seem like they're intentionally sitting empty. And so it is something to talk about. I don't know how I feel about it either, but I do want to say that it was a strong recommendation from the Housing Committee.
Sal.
I'm just wondering if we talked with the owners of the buildings that make up, you know, this 50,000 square feet. I mean, I'm sure we've had conversations with them, but well, I'm not certain what the extent of those conversations were, but would it make sense to meet with them as a group and find out what they're continuing? I mean, there are obvious obstacles certainly immediately after the flood, but maybe those obstacles have changed now. Maybe the problems are different, and maybe there's more we can do. Have we ever tried anything like that, or is it worth?
We have over the years several times, and I guess I just offer it's usually better to meet with them individually. just because they're more likely to share their story than they are with others, and they're all a little bit different. We certainly had many meetings with individual building owners in regard to flood damage and documenting what they needed and those kind of things. And, you know, as Gary mentioned, some people are actively looking for tenants, and some people less actively or have, you know, a certain price, and if they don't get it, they won't lease. You know, I think when we're talking about revenue here, it sounds like what we're really talking about is economic development, which then can potentially bring in more sales revenue and can bring in more grand list revenue. It's a longer game than just an immediate. So, you know, I just point out, we used to have $100,000 a year in our budget for economic development, and we did fund a corporation, and over the last couple of years, it's been eliminated to try to keep our tax rate. So it's, I'm not trying to be the downer, but that, you know, we've made a policy decision, which is now the consequence of having the resources available that we might have had. When we hired the Josh position, we actually added the economic development piece to his position, and I think some of that was starting to work, but then he got completely redirected after the flood to work on renovations and all those other things as most of the planning department. So, you know, we will begin a process, I believe, to replace that position, and hopefully we would find someone, you know, someone else, which staff person that would be. I think that would be the logical place. You know, if in future budgets we can find places to add resources for economic development, whether it's a staffer or funding another commission. And, you know, in a minor way, the Commission on Resiliency and Recovery is looking at downtown stability. That's one of their works. And Montpelier Live specifically looks at downtown economic structure. But I think, you know, a lot of it is short term. How do we get a tenant into a business? How do we, you know, they're dealing with the flood. They're dealing with a tough construction project right now. So those things are things that we can try to work with them on. So I think defining what you'd like to see out of this, then we can think about how we get there. It's, you know, because, you know, to quote Adrian, you know, we do need to be bold, strategic, and think outside the box. But what does that mean? That, you know, what are those ideas? What are the direction we want to go?
Okay, so if it is clear enough for the city staff, I wanna work with a department or a position, which you mentioned, it will be Josh's position. With that position, whoever comes, and just like, if it is okay with the city council, maybe even create a subcommittee and just create some concrete plan. So I hope it is clear enough, because without working specifics to staff, I don't have any specific information in my mind to bring and ask for an approval or support from City Council. Will it be good enough for you, Bill?
Well, I guess I'm going to offer this comment that this is starting to go into the next couple of agenda items. You know, I think what we're finding ourselves in a position where every individual item is important and we all want to solve all the problems. And then we don't necessarily have the staff capacity, or the council hasn't prioritized anything, and we're just chasing ourselves around. So if we go through identify our top priorities for the year, whether it's now or in July, we do strategic planning, and the council says, yes, economic development is a top priority, and here's the strategies we're going to adopt, that's great. And if it's one of our 2 or 3 things, but then, you know, what are we not going to do? For the last several years, once we kind of discontinued the funding for the Economic Development Corporation, essentially the policy position has been the #1 economic development item we need is more housing. If we get more people, that's more grand list, that's also more people in the town, that's more people shopping, that's all those things. And so given what we had, that's where we put almost all of our effort is housing, is economic development, and assumed, or, you know, funded Montpelier Alive to do some of this other downtown, you know, vacancy work. That's not really developing new properties. So I think the council should really be clear about where your priorities are, where this falls in them, because everything we mentioned is important, but there's only so much. that can be done and that you can do. So, we'll be hiring a new person. Josh came to us with a real specific expertise in economic development. That's why he's gone to be head of the Barry Economic Development Group. Will we get an applicant with that specific, we'll ask, but will we get that kind of, expertise? We don't know until we go out. We all have some, I won't be here. So, yes, I think if you all decide this is important, and you decide the way you want to do it is to have a council member working with our staff, great, we're all for it. So we don't want to work with it, but I think it's got to be within the big picture. Yeah.
So I would just say if Montpelier Live is bringing that group together, I don't know what it is, but it might be worth, like as an interim, working with them, working with the businesses, and then maybe not taking over their agenda, because I don't know what it is, but I might come on Friday just to be kind of see and listen to where they're going with that, because that might potentially be a good way to bring in interested parties, have the energy behind it to make change, and not necessarily using limited city staff for another committee.
Yeah, I mean, I'd let the folks that attended that meeting speak, but my understanding is that it was largely about how to deal with the unhoused population that is negatively affecting downtown. And of course, we spent a lot of time talking about those strategies, so it's slightly different, but it could.
Okay.
They'll probably open anything.
They would be, they love seeing city councilors at meetings. I think Sal can back me up on that. They always mention that we're there and they're happy that we show up. So, I mean, you can kind of come and see, and if it doesn't turn out, though, you can always leave at any time. It's up to you guys. I mean, I would welcome you, and I know they would like to see, but I think this, like Bill says, this kind of has a specific framework that what it wants to deal with. And so I don't think it's going to be bringing in people to talk about how to bring in business. It's going to be bringing in partners to, what are your suggestions on how do we deal with this issue? I think it's more like that, which is obviously going to be a very hard nut to crack. But then so isn't a lot of things we take on.
So.
I was at their monthly meeting, first Wednesday every month they meet in the council chambers. And everything Jim is saying is about this committee is in fact the case. But they're also dealing with the construction project. But the underlying theme is that business is down. There are fewer people on the street, and they kind of realize that until things change somehow, housing one element, but there's not going to be much of an increase in that, and so they're just they're worried about that situation. Most of their sales are down. They're very creative, resilient people. I mean, it's remarkable the things they have come up with to generate business. But they're worried that they can't sustain it without something else, some sort of infusion of, and they don't know what that is. But I think they would welcome. I mean, it'd be a good place to start to talk with them about it. We didn't really discuss this sort of issue, like, how do they differ from people who have not reopened it?
Right.
And what were the obstacles? And they may have some insight into that. There may be people there who, I mean, I'm not that familiar yet with all the business owners, but I'm sure there are people in that room who have reopened one of their businesses and not another. So it's probably worth having those one-on-one discussions with. I mean, they're certainly not shy about talking about their issues.
Okay, well, thanks. Bill, I think Bill's right that this plays into the whole big priorities setting process and what are we doing. So I think it's great that you're already working with them, Jim. Why don't we move to that next item now so we can start talking about it. And this is item 10, strategic plan review proposal. Kelly, are you up for this?
Yeah. All right, hi everyone. Kelly Murphy, Assistant City Manager. So in your packet, you have an overview of the way staff is proposing that we recast the strategic plan or annual plan, really being a little bit more reflective of the work that we're going to be doing this year. And so just going to kind of, provide a few talking points, and then just what we're really looking for is for guidance on whether or not this seems like a good process for you. So essentially, just in a nutshell, based on what we've got in the memo, we just wanted to highlight the primary role of setting policy. So that this work is really aiming to do just that. And so other areas that we focus on throughout the year are adopting the budget and working to find priorities, approving the city plan for longer-term vision, and adopting ordinances. And then this annual work plan or strategic plan. I mean, even we may step away from the term strategic plan, just in view of the city plan that we're working on and looking at that draft. And so what we're proposing is that we would work through May and June, cleaning up pending agenda items. So we wouldn't be introducing any new policy initiatives at this time. We'd just be kind of clearing the decks so that we can kind of get to work on some of the items that are identified in the city plan. I think we're really trying to capitalize on the city plan, coming through, and also kind of aligning with the work in that plan, so we can kind of, hone in and laser focus on a few of those items. And so, as this outline suggests, we would review and adopt that city plan, and then embark in a process in July to establish the highest priority areas. Some that were referenced in the memo that will be likely, I think, high priorities for you would be hiring a new city manager, advancing the Country Club Road project, or adopting a comprehensive capital improvement plan. And so, just getting into more of the specifics with dates, we would be proposing a 2-part workshop series. So we would start on July 9th and then have the second one on the 23rd. I won't get into the specific details of what we'd be looking to do in those sessions, but really we'd be looking to get your thoughts and to establish what your priorities are, if there are a couple, 2 to 3 maybe, goals within the strategic plan that we would want to focus on in our annual work plan. And then just looking on through this, so then once we do that process, we likely would then come back with a plan for approval that we could then work on. And so then once we had that, after these 2 workshops, they would sort of be part of our weekly reporting, progress reports, budget proposals, and would likely be organized around the city plan categories. So we would be using those categories to rank priority. So I'll leave it there to see if there are questions. Really, we're just looking to kind of get your guidance on if this seems like a good process for you. I will also note, and I don't want to get too far ahead, but the next item is also an opportunity to do a little bit of brainstorming around this work.
Yeah, they seem like they almost could have been one agenda item in a way.
That's a great point. I mean, we went back and forth on whether or not to have it be just one item, and I think, between now and July, we really wanted to have the opportunity to kind of get your thoughts, so that then we could work those items into our future planning. And so we wanted to kind of thread that needle a little bit, kind of take up, and I didn't say this at the beginning of just the introduction here, but this is really based on what came out of our council retreat and sort of the recommendation from council to align with the city plan. But then also, as we've been kind of working through agenda items and absent having
functional plan, you know, we wanted to make sure that we are also identifying strategic areas so that we can focus on the work that council would like to focus on.
Just to weigh in on that, because we, you know, as Kelly mentioned, you mentioned, Jim, we did kind of look at this, and I think ultimately we just separated them because one was really about the process for doing the strategic plan, the other was about the content. So just kind of like, are you okay with this process? And then now let's talk about at least what the top ones are for now. Now we're going to come back. Good, you're right. Good on.
Thank you for this. I love process. So one of the recommendations, I think, you know, we've talked about this during our, I'm going to say it wrong again, not our offsite. Thank you. I'm never going to get it right, ever. Our retreat. The words are going to be really important. And so I think just now we said functional plan, city plan, strategic plan, annual plan. And so I think we need to be very, very clear about what we want to call this, because I think it's going to bring chaos into this process if we don't have 100% clarity of what we're talking about and what the purpose of that plan is, whatever we want to call it. And I know that, I think Kelly, you said it, maybe you said this, we're also going to be talking about all the other plans that we have, like the inventory of all the plans. So I think we want, as a council, be very, very specific about what we want to call this and name it. And so that we're all very clear, so the staff is very clear about what we're talking about. And so we're not, because I just got confused about all the different plans, and I don't want that. I don't want to be confused. So I think that could be, you know, a discussion that we have, and maybe a group agreement about what we call this, because yeah, I don't want there to be any.
Yeah, I can respond to that. I was the one that did most of the writing of that, and feedback I got was that people weren't totally bought into calling it a strategic plan. So that's been our term of art now for the last few years. So I said strategic plan or annual plan or goals, you know, whatever you choose to call it. So I tried to throw all those ideas out there. I think that it's, you know, I think once you call it something, it's important that you all own it and that you all own what's in it. That's really it, because that's going to guide the priority of work. It's going to guide what shows up on your agendas for the rest of the year. You know, it's going to guide probably the budget next year. So, you know, the name, whatever everyone's comfortable with, if they can feel, you know, it's the content really.
Karen.
Yeah, I agree. We need to be really clear about what it is that we're trying to do. And I've been looking at other municipalities and at other city plans and master plans and strategic plans, and seeing how what we're trying to do with our city plan and what we're talking about now lines up with what others are doing, and it's different. And so like the other master plans that I've looked at are much more long-range goals. And then the strategic plan is kind of the short-term goals, how you make movement in this defined period of time towards those long-term goals. We have a city plan that's a big combination of short and long-term. There's some things in there that are just kind of descriptions of what we're already doing. So I'm feeling fuzzier than I was before about how we might fit into the city plan. But I hear you say work plan, and we're also talking about priorities. And so I think if we look at the long-range goals in the city plan and use that same structure and those same goals that are there, with the 12 topic areas, and then think about what are we going to be making sure moves in the next year, 2 years, whatever we define as our time. And then from there, staff can come up with a work plan. But so that might be that, you know, under housing, we're going to move on the country club road development, and under infrastructure, public works, or whatever it is, we're going to move on a capital plan. And then if we say that those are our priorities, and we keep it simple, you know, just a few things in each category, then when it comes time to make our budget, what it tells us is we're going to fund the capital plan. We've already basically sort of decided that because we put it as one of our top priorities. in this strategic plan. And so it might, if we have to cut something, maybe we're going to cut something somewhere else, because that's what I think we need to be clear about when we're doing priorities. And so if there's a way for us to take the city plan and not reinvent it, not come up with all new goals or anything like that, but just to come up with a simplified version. Maybe there are a few large goals we could come up with that the other 12 fall under. I don't know if that's easier to work with, but something simple and straightforward.
Because what we do is so simple and straightforward. Jim?
And Bill can correct me on this, but in the past, this used to be one of our earliest meetings, I thought, right, Bill? I mean, not the first meeting, but literally the second meeting was, let's talk about our priorities right up front. And I've already talked to Kelly on my feedback. I'm not interested in having a retreat next year. I think we can do it on our own. I think our second meeting of the year should go right into priorities so the staff knows what they're doing right from the start, rather than, see, at this point, we've kind of muddled away some time. And I'm going to be honest with you, I did not really see much out. I didn't really see the point of the retreat, to be honest, because I didn't see us set us off on anything. I think a priority session, like we used to have in the old days, set us off and running right in the second meeting. The staff knew what it was. They went to work on it. And there wasn't, like, to me, we've wasted a couple months or so because we're kind of spinning our wheels. And that's just my suggestion. We did it that way, and everybody was into it. Like, they came with their top priorities. We kicked them around and we agreed on them as a council. I think we always came up with at least 3 main ones. And it didn't mean we weren't going to deviate during the year, because things come up that you don't anticipate. And that almost happens every year. But you try not to let it throw you too much from your original priorities, because you already got the staff moving that way. The ball is already rolling right from the second meeting. And so I've said that's my priority next year, is never mind the retreat. Let's just go right into, we can do this ourselves. We don't need somebody saying like, well, what's your word for today, or whatever it was like that, which I think we just go right into the kickoff. We put it down and we get staff leaves knowing what they're going to do. We leave knowing what we're going to do, and we just roll. But that's just my suggestion.
I'll just weigh in, not on that particular topic, but whenever you do it, and I do think, to Carrie's point about structuring it around the city plan or however you choose to do it, I think one of the really important parts of this conversation is this is the time when each of you have ideas, whether it's vacancy tax or whatever it might be, things, and that's the chance for people to throw their ideas out, and and then the council decides which ones they're really going to take up. And I think that's the importance of that, because you have sort of a broad, yes, this might be important, but I don't think we should spend 3 meetings on it this year. So, and that gives everyone a clear expectation, instead of just, hey, let's add this to the next agenda. Let's add this because I think this is important. And then we just spend our time picking up ad hoc agenda items and not having a strategy. Those of you who've been off the last couple of years know that as soon as we do adopt that plan, the next week or two, the weekly memo then shows all the agendas scheduled out right through till November or December, because now we take the time to say, okay, well, this is when this will be ready to go. So it does set our plan, and we are behind the shoes, no question. But there's been a lot of changes this year, a lot of things to deal with. So I think what Kelly and I are proposing is, let's get the stuff that's on the table done, clear the decks. You'll have Kelly here, I'll be gone, and sit down and figure out where you want to go, because that's going to be the theme.
Can I add something? I respectfully disagree with Bill about agenda items, because we don't see each other as a group. So I think each city councilor can say that oh, I want to discuss this, I want to hear your thoughts in a public meeting. And like, what revenue options, we just give 10 minutes, or I don't know, maybe 20, it got longer. I think it's okay, even if we have priorities, even if we have our plans, whatever, I think it's still okay to add some item and hear others' opinions, because we don't have any other chance to do this. Thank you.
So, go ahead, Sam.
Well, I just wanted to say that I like the idea of using the city plan. I mean, it's an existing structure, it's a required structure. It's a way we're already thinking about our goals. Many of them are long-term, but some are short-term. We've talked in the past about putting time limits on priorities, on goals, and I think that's another element we could add to whatever comes out of our planning. I think there are 1 year goals, and there are 3 year goals, and there are 10-year goals, and we can identify those. And I think that would be a benefit, because we always come out of our planning meeting sort of riding off madly in all directions, wanting to accomplish everything. And I think if we put time limits within a structure of the city plan, that's a decent first step.
So thinking in terms of what's been presented to us as a process for the next couple of months, how do people feel about this proposal that we have in our packet for May, June, July, and then beyond? Carrie and then Adrian.
Yeah, I think the basic process, I think, is good. Waiting until July to really start with the strategic planning. What I'm not really clear when I read through all the stuff that's happening in July about throw this on, but you might not get what you want, but you might, and there's a lot, I'm not clear what's going to affect at the end. And so I think it would be helpful before we start, or maybe it's the first thing we do in the strategic planning process, to get clear about what kind of plan it is we're trying to have. Is it, we're just focusing on 3 things that are our most important things to do, or are we focusing on every chapter of the city plan, that kind of thing? So that's a process that I don't see in here that I would just like to make sure we do up front.
I think this is your opportunity to define how you want the plan to go. I mean, we spent months on this last year, and then several people expressed dissatisfaction with the way it went and how it came out. And that was one of the takeaways, at the end of the year, and I think in the retreat, I understand. And so the idea was to lay this out, and if there's anything people want changed or added, you could give a suggestion to debate it all out now. But you're right, it should be really clear when you go into what you're doing and how it's going to best serve the 7 of you. It really doesn't matter what format we use, as long as the 7 of you and our staff know what we all mean, and we're all working from the same page, and we know that these are the top priority items, and these are the ones that we're going to revisit in 6 months, these are the ones that we don't expect.
Adrian.
My opinion is that waiting for July 9th, because that's 2 months away until we host our first, whatever we want to call it, strategic planning workshop. Is that what they call it in other cities, strategic plans?
Yeah.
They do?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so hold on. So I would propose, and don't jump at me for proposing this, a special meeting to accelerate this process. I think July is way too long, like Jim said. If we start planning this in March, like we're already March, April, May, June, 4 months behind, and it's not fair to city staff for us to be like, I don't know what's happening. So I would propose we look at a date in the next couple of weeks. I know we have 3 meetings in
This
May.
week, 2 weeks after this, yep.
So I would propose a special meeting to focus on just this for the city council to identify our top, 3 priorities for the strategic plan, using the city plan as the basis, and then pulling out, we're not creating anything new. I think that's the whole point of using the city plan. It's already there. It's already been hopefully adopted at some point, and we're pulling out those top 3 priorities that the city council wants to focus on in the next 1 to 2 years. And that's just a prioritization exercise that we can do as a city council, and I'm proposing to do that in a special meeting.
So just to jump onto that, one of the reasons we proposed July is that in your next 2 or 3, depending, you will be talking about the city plan. Those are, you know, you're having a special meeting next week to start your city plan. You've got another public hearing on the 28th. That could well go into June. So at least part of our thinking is if we're going to structure this around the city plan, we ought to wait and see what you adopt, but that's also the opportunity to then talk about your priorities while you're discussing the city plan. So I'm not trying to dissuade you from a special meeting if you want one, but we are going to be talking about priorities and goals and planning the next 2 or 3 meetings.
So,
So as I read this, and I, even without this, I don't see any other way to do it if we're going to try and map this to the city plan. It seems to me we need to review the entire city plan in some detail and prioritize everything in it. So some things are going to be ridiculously low priority long-term, and some things are going to be, let's do this next week. We'll get it started next week. Otherwise, the city plan sits there on the shelf and doesn't do anything, and somebody's got to be the first one to go through and say what's important and what's not. And, you know, why not us? I mean, we're the one who suggested this, that we map it to the city plan. I don't see any other way to do it, otherwise you're sort of ignoring a whole bunch of stuff. So that the next council and the council after that is not informed by decisions that, you know, that we have the opportunity to make.
Jim.
I'm going to read just one line here that Bill or Kelly or both of them put in, and I think it hits on what you say and what you say, Sal. Priority items will identify the lead entity, council, committee, department, and an expected time frame for completion or updates. To me, that is key. In the past, not to knock the plan, but we kind of let it sit on the shelf a lot of times when we talked about our priorities because we felt we knew the priorities as city councilors. I mean, we are expected to be leaders and to kind of know to lead. And I didn't need some plan to tell me what the city needed. I threw out what I felt it needed, and we all did. And we stewed it down to some things that, but I mean, like, I do agree, time is always of the essence to do this because time wasted is staff spinning their wheels, like I said. And that's why I think we do this right out of the gate next year. I know it's a little late last year, I'm just harping on next year. But it's all about, it gets everybody on the same page immediately. We all know where we're going. We're not sitting on the bus, somebody going, we turning left or right here? No, we know where we're turning. So, I mean, it's all about making it happen quicker, not wasting time.
Now, I want to point out, well, for one thing, I want to call on Peter Kelman in a minute because he's had his hand up for a very long time. But part of what I'm thinking about this is that the city plan, which used to be called the master plan, isn't really the same kind of thing as our plan for what we're going to do for work for the next year or 2 years. It's part of it, but the city plan has a different function. And so I don't want to get too tied up in thinking, well, this is what's going to direct our work for the next year, because that's more of a broader vision for the city than what our work is going to do. But what our work plan is for a year, leading up to the budget and leading up to projects and ordinances and programs, it's not quite the same thing. But Peter, I do want to call on you because you've had your hand up for a long time.
Thanks, Jack. I just want to agree with what you just said and what I think Carrie was saying. I don't know how many of you have read and much of the city plan. I've read a lot of it. In theory, you want to be aligned, but this city plan is a very strange animal. I think you need to do what Carrie suggested. Stick to look at the goals and aspirations. Do not, Sal, do not get down into the details. The details in the city plan are very variable. Some chapters are strong, some chapters you're going to go, why did they even bother? So don't tie yourselves to aligning with the city plan. Pick and choose, but stay at the high level and figure out what you want to do this year of the specifics. You start looking at the specifics in the city plan, you will go crazy. Thank you.
Thanks, Sal. Thanks, Peter. For some of us, it's not a long drive, too, so. Carrie?
Yeah, so Adrian has me convinced that we should not wait until July. I think we can start before that. And, but I think I want to be really clear. Maybe if we could say that at our first meeting, we're going to decide what the structure and format of this plan will be. So will it be, we identify our top 3 things we want to do, like hire a city manager, et cetera, or will it be more like a traditional strategic plan where we've got goals and strategies? And I would say, if we look at the city plan, there's a million things in here, but just as an example of what we were talking about earlier tonight, we were talking about economic development, right? So there's a whole section on economic development. So we could say, maybe we decide that that's going to be a priority, and there's a goal we could choose one of these goals that's already here, like continue to improve our business and economic climate to encourage and support businesses, nice and broad. And one of the strategies that's down here is develop and implement a new economic development strategic plan, which kind of sounds like where that earlier discussion was going, is that we really need to think comprehensively about economic development. So just as an example, our plan could just have that, and that's just what's on the economic development section. And then we do a similar kind of thing for every other section.
I think that was what we were thinking about. And I think the other key piece, I tend to agree with Peter that we don't necessarily need to go through every bit. But when you're reviewing the city plan, what you want to do is make sure, and I'm going to oversimplify this, but you want to make sure that the policy articulated in the city plan is something you agree with, and that the efforts that we're making are consistent with that. So say we had a city plan goal that said, we want to expand housing all over the place. And then we spend the year saying, let's work on restrictions to housing. That's a top priority for us. I think, and I know that's an obvious one, but you want to make sure that, okay, here's our big goal. What are we doing this year that is consistent with that goal? And then that's when the strategic plan might come in. Okay, so what are our goals? What are the strategies we're using this year? And then we can develop work plans from that. That doesn't mean at the end of the day that you can't then go through all of that and say, and then say, out of all of this stuff that we've laid out in these categories, these are our top 3. These are the things that are most important, that when we're sitting here at Jim's first meeting next year, that we're going to want to have done or, had it to wherever we think it should be by then.
We always like the counselors to come in on the first one and not be overwhelmed.
All right.
You always did it that way.
Carrie.
I'm guilty of making this happen, but I feel like this conversation that we're having right now is the one that I think we should have at our first meeting and decide what's it going to look like. So that's what I'd like to propose for our process, is that we have a special meeting in June where we decide what our outcome is going to be, what we're working towards, and then we work from there.
It sounds like we're all kind of hitting in the same area.
Are people nodding their heads at that?
Yes.
Okay, Kelly and Bill and I'll figure out plan some dates and stuff, and there we'll go.
Thank you all.
Now, does that take care of what all we needed to do for strategic plan review and priority
reality
discussion
is,
at this point? Because I think it does.
honestly, the reality is you're talking about June 4 or June 18 if you do it on a Wednesday night.
Yep,
I mean, that's,
yep. So, okay, okay, yeah, I'll take your, right now.
This is I've experimented with trying to combine the city strategic plan with the municipal plan. Municipal plan's got a lot of wishful thinking and pablum in it, with no milestones or performance measures. And in order to be effective as a council, you need a strategic plan that has performance measures and milestones in it and deadline dates. But one of them should be the simple, I mean, the last 80 pages are missing. There's not even a printed copy of this, packet here for perusal. So I'm ill prepared to catch up with what y'all are talking about tonight, because I haven't seen, the memos or those sections of the packet are missing from the only binder in the room. So that's in keeping with the agendas that have phone numbers on it and dates and times, et cetera. We really need to get our basic open meeting law compliance in place. But I will try to provide some suggestions once I get hold of the documents.
Okay, thank you, Steve. All right, folks, time for a 10-minute break. And hopefully we don't have that much left, but still, I want to respect people's needs for their break. with our break, and I think we can probably turn off our air conditioners because they're, well, let's see how people feel. They seem pretty loud to me. Yeah, why don't you?
Get it done soon.
Get it done, that's right.
Keep us uncomfortable and get out of here.
Yeah. All right. We, taking a suggestion from Jim, one of the things that we generally do on the first or second meeting is to adopt our rules of procedure, rules for the conduct of meetings, and group norms. And if people are happy with with all of them the way they are now, then we can just pass them and be done with it. If people want to discuss them in any level of detail, we can do that also. I do think it's worth paying a bit of time thinking about it, specifically because at least at recent meetings, and really for some time, I've been a bit concerned with the tone of the meetings, and particularly the tone of public comments. But in general, I think that the attacks that we hear from some members of the public detract from the ability of the council to have productive conversations, and detract from the content that people are bringing to us. And so I would encourage us to adopt the rules and norms that we have, but ask people to make a commitment to adhering to them. But I'll open the floor to anyone else who hasn't carried.
Yes, a couple of things. You had brought to my attention that a committee in the legislature might be talking about doing something or empowering city councils and select boards to do something in response to troublesome attendees. I don't know. So I watched some of their committee discussion, not all of it, but what I was really struck by is that we have a really nice, clear procedure written out here in this rules of conduct. So, and I think we're pretty good about following it already, and that it could really serve us well. So just speaking in favor of that. The other thing is the group norms is they're great, and I haven't read them since a year ago, and I would love it if we had some way to integrate them somehow, or even just a little reminder. In my job, we have group norms also, and they're attached to every agenda, and every meeting we devote at least like 2 minutes, even if it's just 2 minutes of silent reflection, and read them again and think about them. Sometimes we'll discuss them, but something that brings to people's attention, or we put it on a poster and it's up on the wall or something like that, because they're really good, and I don't want them to get lost.
Thanks. Yeah, I think they were developed before I got on the council, but when the council was going through a period that was more discord than we have on our council, fortunately, and they thought it was necessary to really talk about what we expected of ourselves and of each other.
Yeah, that's exactly right. There was a retreat held shortly after March 1 year, and the council was very divided and had a lot of stress amongst themselves. So they worked through basically how to interact with one another, and what expectations of behavior and conduct and respect that they would try to exhibit with each other. And they came up with those themselves and adopted them. And basically the strategy, to Carrie's point, was they all agreed that if somebody was crossing the line, that just the response would be, we have a group norm. Just that was the code word, so to speak, that people would say to get people back. And I know one of the reasons, I think Kelly and I, and then Kelly brought it up during the retreat, was simply it now predates those predate anybody that's sitting on this council, so they're not yours. I mean, they're the ones that are adopted, but none of you have thought through them and actively said, I can buy into this or not. And if you're happy with them, great. If you'd like to spend a little time on them to come up with something that's your own or feels more authentic to you, then great. But, you know, it is important. We talk about difficult issues, and there's a lot of highly charged commentary, and sometimes it's easy to forget that everyone's trying their best, and they're here. You all are volunteering your time, essentially. You know, how do you want to interact with people and do the best for the community? So, like I said, can you just do it? That's the background. You can do what you want.
I wanted to mention one other thing, which you all have at your seats, draft language that I proposed a year or two ago, and I'm not married to this idea, but I wanted to throw it out for discussion, which is we've talked about, well, how should we deal with public comment and general business and appearances? And, you know, I've had some discussions with some people about, well, how long should people get for general business and appearances? Keeping in mind that the function of our meeting is to enable the city council to make decisions. We still want to hear from the public. And so the basic idea that I came up with was potentially not be as rigid at holding people to 3 minutes for general business and appearances, that setting no more than 30 minutes for general business and appearances, and letting people go up to 5 minutes, assuming we have enough time to fit everybody in within that 30 minutes. Now that, in most cases, probably means, or potentially means, devoting more time to general business and appearances than we do now. And we might not take up all that time, but it has the possibility of having people be a little less frustrated when they run out of time. So
it also means surveying in advance, actually counting in advance, or asking how many people are planning to speak. Otherwise, you have no idea
exactly
whether you're going to meet the limit or not.
Yep, that's the tricky part.
So
But yeah.
it's a whole different process, yeah.
Carrie.
Yeah, I think it's fine to expand it to 5 minutes, and I like the idea of the 30-minute limit, but I'm wondering about including that level of specificity in here when the other rules give the chair or whoever's running the meeting a lot of latitude, so that it could be that we've got a really tight agenda and maybe there are 50 people waiting, but for whatever reason you decide we're going to have only 15 minutes of general business and appearances, or the other way around. So I'd hate to lock us into that 30 minutes. I want to have the flexibility. That may be present already in the rules somewhere, because I think that is sort of a blanket thing it says, but other than that, I think it's fine.
Jim.
I want to thank you, Jack, because if you remember, I asked quite a while back, I think we should expand it to 5, and I want to thank you for considering that.
You're welcome.
I just felt it was fair, and especially if we only had 3 or 4 people that wanted to speak, so thank you.
So what do you want to do? Switch to 5, but dispense with the rest of that, and just leave that time management to the discretion of the chair? Is that what you're thinking?
That's what I would prefer, yeah.
All right. Does somebody want to make a motion to amend? Go ahead.
I don't know if we need to do this, but reading that same document, there's a section in there about seating capacity, and it speaks very specifically about city council chambers and that kind of thing, and it's not really applicable necessarily, because, yeah. So we could, I don't know if we need to make a motion to change that to have more inclusive language, or if that's just a technical thing that you think staff can just sort of take care of.
I think it is. Kelly and I talked about that the other day.
Great.
I'll move this.
All right, so the motion is to increase the time limit on general business to 5 minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Anything else that we want to talk about with rules of procedure, conduct of meetings, and group norms? Carrie?
Yeah, so the rules of procedure, there's something in here that we don't do and we might want to change. So number 7 on rules of procedure, it says any items discussed in the agenda under the heading of general appearances should be limited to not more than 10 minutes per subject unless extended by majority vote of the council, which sort of contradicts what we just changed in the other one. So that we may want to amend that.
Delete it?
Yeah, maybe just delete it.
Can I ask a point of clarification on the one you just thought, it's the one you just passed? The 5 minutes, is that for just general business, or is that for all comment throughout the meeting? Because it's 3 minutes for agenda items.
I think it was just for general business appearances. That's what we were talking about, I think.
That's what I thought it was, yeah.
So Carrie, you suggest just taking Rule 7 out of the rules of conduct?
I think so. Yeah.
All right. Do that by unanimous consent? Everybody agrees? Okay. Ready to move on?
Did we vote on the 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did.
It was quick.
We're just moving right along tonight.
All right. Moving then to city council reports. I don't remember whose end is up next this week. Adrian, I'll go with you.
Nothing.
Okay. Carrie.
Just a couple of things. I'm glad that we had a member of the public bring up the sanctuary city status of Montpelier. And I would like us to kind of look at that and remind ourselves what that means. And also to think about the fact that it's very likely we're going to be targeted by the federal government for having that status. And so just to be thinking about what's our response, how do we react to that? I don't have any specific suggestions, but I want us to talk about it because I think it's really, really important that we have this status and that we don't need to revisit it. I don't think. I don't want to revisit it. I just want to go with it and maybe just be very clear about what it means and what protections we're providing to people in the city based on that. Another thing is that the search process for finding a firm to do the search process for the new city manager is underway. And I think there are updates in the city manager's report, but that we're in the midst of interviews with final candidates. And so I think that we should have a decision very soon. I'm not sure exactly when, but I'm hopeful that maybe even by next week, we might have a recommendation to bring to the city council. And then just one other thing is that I was reading the ordinances for something, I can't even remember what. Oh, I think it was about parades. And it refers to the police chief as he, and there's a couple other situations like that. And I thought, I do remember us having some conversation about gender neutral language in the ordinances, and I know it's been something that's been sort of worked on, and I looked at some other ordinances and they clearly were written with that in mind. So I thought it'd be really great to go through all those and just identify those. So I have started doing that. It's not a big job to just read through all of them and identify where they're gender non-neutral language. So I just want to let people know that I'm working on that, and then I'm hopefully will be able to come with a proposal for several changes to just be made in one fell swoop.
Great, thank you. So.
I just wanted to reiterate how important it is, I think, that we're present at the MBA meetings. And they really appreciate having counselors there. And also to remind us that they are anxiously awaiting the process that we promised following the passage of the local sales tax. They really want to make sure that they participate fully in that process.
Yeah, one of the next 2 meetings, I think it's the next one, we have a whole section on finances. Just an update on our current financial situation, the local options tax, I think talking about appointing a treasurer, update on the water, the bulk of the next meeting is devoted to finance, be it the Sarah night. So that would be, we'll have some recommendations about the use of the local options tax, and obviously can take public comment and
Yeah, great.
discuss
And that's it for you, Sal?
Yeah.
Jim?
I went to the library grand reopening for the down cellar, and I'm glad I did, because I was the only city representative there, and I think it's important that somebody shows up for these things, and Dan gave a nice speech. It looked very nice, but I also talked with and saw the new teen center, which I thank them very much for having that go in there. They did a nice job setting it up. I talked with the young man who has a lot to do. I can't remember his name. I'm so bad with names. But anyway, it was nice to see. It was a nice room they set up, and they're doing us a favor because we don't have anything for them now. The other thing, Carrie, you'll be interested in this. I went up to the park, our park in District 3, and they had a meeting with residents, and they wanted to talk about what would you like to see here. I almost got in the middle of a fight between two women over one thing, but I won't go into it. But I was going to take the tour, but it started raining really hard. I didn't have an umbrella, so I will go back. But it's about a 9-acre park, and so it's the only one in our district. So they have 2 or 3 more times where you can go up and they'll walk you around. So just to let you know, I do plan to go back and walk around. Hopefully it won't be raining. 2 other things quickly. I want to thank Sarah, our finance person, who met with me personally with Amy of the Montpelier Senior Center to go over the budget so I could understand it clearer, and so she could understand it clear, because we have some people questioning it, and I'm going to make a full report to them tomorrow about the questions they gave me to be answered. And Sarah did a great job. It was, she took over an hour to sit down with us and go over item by item. And I really appreciated it, being back on that thing. So I was happy about that. And my last thing is, since I last talked to you, we've done 4 negotiations, and I continue to be impressed with our team. I mean, they're doing a better job than I would, keeping themselves in control, I'll tell you that. And so I'm very impressed with the 3 women, and of course, all of the individual department heads that show up. So I'm still seeing something that I'm very, I think they're doing us well. It's a tough thing, let me tell you.
Thanks, Jim. Palin?
Okay, 2 things, maybe 3, sorry. The subcommittee for committee review action, we share updates on the city manager's weekly reports for the public and city council, and we are planning to bring our suggestions and our work to you in our next meeting, and ask your suggestions to improve it. And second thing, I've noticed that the sitting arrangements are not really inclusive and taught based on gender issues. I really want to see some kind of tablecloth so I can wear skirts or dress. So I'm okay to wear pants, but I really want to feel that I have options, right? Because men, they are very comfortable, but as a woman, I want to dress up, right, for the meeting. So if we can provide some kind of tablecloths to cover this for the camera, it will be great. And also, I've been getting feedback about the voice, the microphone. Whatever I do, somehow in some of the meetings, people cannot hear me. So can we just consider if it works with the system, having like buddy mics, so whatever we turn, it will be here, and then people can hear our voices. Maybe it is only me, but people are saying, oh, we couldn't hear you, like, and I don't know really, I don't know what to do more, so thank you.
Great, thanks, Carolyn. Couple of things following up on what Carrie said about, and what Deborah Messing said about the sanctuary city policy. During our break, I talked to our police chief about getting a communication out to the public to make sure people understand not only the sanctuary city, but also our fair and impartial policing policy. That was the product of a lot of work by the police review committee when one of my first years on the council, and I think given what the government is doing, I think people are justifiably concerned about things like, well, is the federal government going to make our police department act as an enforcement arm of ICE? And so we will be getting out communication about that. And then one other thing, and you can throw something at me if you want to, Evelyn, but I just want to point out this Friday night, our communications director, Evelyn Prim, is receiving her degree of Master's of Public Administration from University of Vermont. And she has been doing all the great work that people see of communications and other part of running the city. The other part of her job is going home, going to classes, and writing papers and taking tests. And so big congratulations. And that's it for me.
Yeah, Evelyn definitely deserves a congratulations for that. She is doing.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go. Sorry.
I just want to note the passing of Nathan Suter, who is very important to a lot of us. I don't know him as well as many folks. I knew him as a neighbor, and he was a terrific neighbor, but I know he's done quite a bit for the city and the community, and just want to say that we're going to miss him.
Thank you. Yeah, that was on my list as well, but yeah, so Nathan's a great individual and certainly a great community member of our Commission on Resilience Recovery, and involved heavily with the schools and with kids and running, and ironic that he passed while running. Sad. Yeah, and his wife is a teacher in our elementary school, and so it's really had an impact on them. So yeah, it's a thing for sure. Back to Evelyn, congrats on the MPA, and certainly she's been doing everything, basically fire calls and ambulance calls, and police, should be a dispatcher pretty soon. So if there's something for us to do, it seems like Evelyn's been doing it. So we really appreciate her a great deal. At our next meeting, one of the items that's going to be on the meeting is East State Street. You talked about it, I think, a meeting or so ago. And the Public Works Director just would like me to make sure you're aware that they really do need some sort of decision about what the layout is going to be so they can start the design. So they'll get the options and the different layouts and the costs and all that. But so you get them and have time to look at them in advance. They really do. The longer we wait, the longer that could delay the project because we can't design. So that's all I have. What?
Okay.
I mean, so Jack asked me if I was going to say something about the woman that fell in the river, and I would simply say that we did have an unfortunate incident. I was away, so I don't know too much about it, Kelly. I know that she was pulled out. Excellent effort by our police and fire together, doing a rope, using a rope system. We don't have an active water rescue, although our fire chief had just recently got a grant to start getting water rescue equipment. Obviously, we don't have it yet, but that has been a priority for ours in our plans for a couple of years to get that capacity. So excellent job by those people, and last I knew, that person was still living. If something's happened since then, I haven't heard otherwise. Is she? Due to this? Is that source?
Spoke to the touch with the people who made the decision.
Okay.
Medical professionals, there was no brain activity in the.
Okay. Thank you. Well,
This
that's,
is one of our homeless communities, so
yeah,
that shouldn't go unstated.
right. Yeah, she fell down a bank into the river and was swept down over the dam and was at the water at the foot of the bank by Shaw's. So, well, I'm sorry to hear that. Like I said, last I knew that hadn't happened, so thank you for that update. Okay, that's all I have.
Okay, thanks, everybody. It is 9:06 and we are adjourned.